Hey everyone, welcome to Area 616. Last week, Marvel and Sony released Spider-Man Far From Home, the final chapter of the Infinity Saga, and the last Marvel movie of 2019. I am going to get into spoilers throughout the video, so if you haven't managed to see Far From Home yet, put this in your watch later until you have. It's absolutely worth the watch. The movie is a blast. It's got its flaws here and there, but overall I really enjoyed it. The action and effects are spectacular, Peter and MJ's chemistry is amazing, and Mysterio is one of my favorite Marvel movie villains to date, and I just love what they're doing with Peter's character in the MCU. There's been a lot of controversy online over MCU Spider-Man. Everyone seems to have a cousin that works at Sony and has some kind of insider information about the Marvel-Sony contract. According to the Raimi stands, Sony has some kind of clause that prevents Marvel Studios from having quote-unquote comic-accurate characters. And according to the MCU stands, Sony is going to take back Spider-Man 3 from Marvel if it doesn't make $1 billion at the box office. So who's actually right here? What's next for Spider-Man, both in the real world and in the MCU? Alright, so call me crazy, but I don't think basing my insider info off of random Twitter users and YouTubers is a good idea. So if I were you, I would take all of these contract-related posts with a bucket of salt. The only people I trust on this subject are Feige, Amy Pascal, Tom Holland, and official press releases. But for the most part, Marvel and Sony have remained very tight-lipped on what the contract actually contains. If only there were another person who is notoriously bad at keeping secrets, and could give us some insight into what the Marvel-Sony contract looks like.
It's going to be an exciting couple of movies.
And you said 2 movies, it means Homecoming 2 and 3, or Avengers
Yeah,
3?
there'll be Spider-Man 2 and 3. It won't be Homecoming 2 and
That's
3. Yeah.
almost a scoop, because we knew about the second one, but not the third one.
Yeah, well now you know. Now you know. Sorry, Marvel. Whoops.
So, yeah. According to Tom Holland, the contract is for 6 movies instead of the oft-reported 5, which I will admit I'm guilty of spreading in the past myself. This means 3 team-up movies and 3 solo movies. So there's only 1 film left for MCU Spidey before Marvel and Sony would need to renew their contract. I guess it's possible that Sony has some kind of absurd clause that Far From Home has to make $1 billion, but honestly, it would just be a hilariously stupid thing to do. They're not dumb enough to think that would go over well with fans. They know that we want to see Spider-Man be a part of the MCU. And also, Far From Home may very well make $1 billion, but even if it doesn't, it's still a huge success. It's already made $600 million, and it's barely been 2 weeks. And as for the they can't be comic accurate thing, just no. It doesn't make any sense, and doesn't take into account characters that are comic accurate, like Mysterio and Shocker, because there's no way John Watts and Marvel just want to do something new and interesting with the character, instead of telling the same story with the same characters for the 3rd time in 15 years. No, it must be a conspiracy. I honestly believe Marvel and Sony have already renewed their partnership, and that it will be announced next Saturday at Marvel's big 90-minute San Diego Comic-Con panel, so I wouldn't worry about it. So let's just get into the fun stuff already. The mid-credit scene sees Peter and MJ come down from swinging through New York City, only for a news report to come up with a huge revelation, featuring J. Jonah Jameson revealing Beck, putting the blame for London's events on Spider-Man, and most shockingly leaking his identity to the public. Spider-Man's identity getting out has happened in the comics, most notably in Civil War, but it always ends up being reversed. But it has never happened in a Spider-Man movie before, presenting fresh ground for Spider-Man 3 to explore. Not fresh ground, it's actually contractually obligated differences to explore. Sorry, I slipped up there. I imagine the movie will feature Spider-Man on the run, trying to find a way to clear his name. There's only one way I could think that he could really do that, which is to be in the same room as Spider-Man. In Far From Home, there was no footage showing his face, so it's only an accusation. So unless there's proof, Peter could be able to get out of this situation, but there is one thing he will absolutely need: a good lawyer. And hey, what do you know, there just so happens to be a good defense attorney working in New York City that takes a particular interest in vigilante cases. Really, the time has never been more perfect for Daredevil to be in a Spider-Man movie, even if he's just Matt Murdock the whole time. Netflix's 2-year limit complicates things if they want to aim for a summer 2021 release, but this is Marvel Studios we're talking about. Who's to say they couldn't work out some kind of deal with Netflix? Of course, they could just reboot the character, but recent interviews with Kevin Feige seem to say that he may not necessarily aim to do that. Twitter user Mitch692, who, from what I can tell, claims to receive insider information every now and then, recently teased that we may be in for some good Daredevil news come San Diego Comic-Con next weekend. Who knows if this is what he's talking about or if he's trustworthy at all, but it's exciting nonetheless. In the comics, Matt Murdock was his lawyer. It's been pointed out that one potential direction for the MCU is the return of Talos. He could shapeshift into Spider-Man and appear in court. But I honestly don't expect Talos to be in Spider-Man 3. I think that was all a tease for Captain Marvel 2, but that's a video for another day. I think the Daredevil idea is much more fun and would give fans the Daredevil Spider-Man team-up we've all been begging for. By far the biggest question on everyone's mind is, who will be the villain of Spider-Man 3? Well, I think J. Jonah Jameson will, in many ways, be the biggest thorn in Spidey's side here. But in the MCU, JJJ and the Daily Bugle are more of a Alex Jones type figure. He's seen as a crazy, loudmouth conspiracy theorist, so the public in general finds him ridiculous. So even if there is footage from Beck himself, there may be some doubt for Jameson. So I imagine he's going to want to provide proof for his claims. In the comics, he once hired a supervillain to publicly unmask Spider-Man. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a very similar situation here. In the comics, it was the Scorpion. However, the director and writers of Far From Home were asked what villains they'd like to have in Spider-Man 3 if it were up to them, and they mentioned 2 characters, Kraven the Hunter and everyone's favorite Spider-Man villain, the Spot. I would absolutely love to see either or both of these in the MCU, especially Kraven. Sony is reportedly developing some kind of weird Kraven movie, but I really don't think that's going to end up happening. Perhaps we could see a version of the Scorpion story where Jameson hires world-renowned hunter Kraven to unmask Spider-Man, but he has his own ulterior motives. I think he would be a unique enemy for Spider-Man because he has no real powers to speak of, and yet he manages to be a genuine threat to Spidey. In Far From Home, we were introduced to a character named Dmitri. While we never got a surname in the movie, in the comics Dmitri Smerdyakov, aka the Chameleon, is the half-brother of Kraven. So there are potential directions to go here. As for the Spot, I think he'd be a ton of fun. He's sort of a joke character, he's called the Spot, but I think his power set is genuinely cool, and really, Mysterio was a joke character too. He can generate spots, or portals, to other places, which means he can do things like this. I honestly think that would be really cool to see on screen, but of course there's always the chance Sony denies Marvel Kraven. What then? Well, then I honestly think they could go with the Jameson hire Scorpion story and add in an additional villain, Alistair Smythe. Let's say he's a tech genius who developed high-tech weapons and armor for the NYPD specifically to hunt down Spider-Man, supplying Matt Gargan with his Scorpion suit. They could even say Smythe works for Oscorp if they wanted to. I think Smythe could even fit in with Kraven in the picture. It'd make perfect sense for him to introduce his Spider Slayer armors into the story here. But of course there's also a chance for the return of another villain. As has been pointed out by fans, it's possible that Beck may have faked his death. Peter asked Edith if this was real, and she said there are no illusions here. Maybe that very specific wording allows a loophole for Beck. Personally, I think Quentin Beck is really dead, but Mysterio may live on. William Riva, the former Stark employee, was shown escaping with a hard drive. And in the movie, Mysterio is a hologram most of the time. So what if Riva creates a deepfake Mysterio? He uses AI and footage to make a Quentin lookalike that can appear to torment Spidey once again. Jake Gyllenhaal could even return to play him. Honestly, I kind of love this idea even more than Quentin faking his death. It makes Mysterio bigger than just one man and allows a way for him to torment Spidey for years to come. Finally, there have long been rumors that Norman Osborn is headed to the MCU, and recent developments may point to this. In June, Marvel Studios put out a casting call for a Caucasian male in their 40s to 60s, known only as a mysterious and nefarious benefactor. It's worth noting that in Ant-Man and the Wasp, Sonny Birch refers to his employer as the benefactor. The role is set to film scenes this fall. That sets up 5 possible places to appear: Black Widow, The Eternals, Falcon and Winter Soldier, WandaVision, and the untitled movie filming in Australia that is most likely Shang-Chi. If it is Osborn, I think that removes at least Eternals and WandaVision. According to supposed insider Roger Wardell, Marvel Studios is very keen on casting David Morrissey in a Phase 4 role. Could he be Norman Osborn? Honestly, I do think Osborn is coming, but I don't think he'll have a large role in Spider-Man 3. I think it'll be a while before he and Spider-Man truly cross paths. Whatever happens, I've never been more excited about Spider-Man's future in the MCU. He's now out of Iron Man's shadow. He's his own hero, the classic Spider-Man we all know and love. It's rumored that Marvel and Sony are looking to do a 9-movie arc for Peter, a high school trilogy, a college trilogy, and an adult trilogy. Is that a lot of Spider-Man? Yes, but honestly, I love it. I would love to watch Peter Parker grow up from a 15-year-old dumpster diving kid in Queens to a fully grown hero in his own degree. That's what we've seen in the comics, and the MCU is the perfect place to replicate that. But what do you guys think? What would you like to see in Spider-Man 3 and beyond? Would you prefer Kraven or the Scorpion or someone else? And do you think we could get Matt Murdock in Spider-Man 3? Let me know all your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.